What is up, donkey butts? I saw a horror movie last weekend that I have not been able to stop thinking about. Before I was a bunny, I was a big old chicken, so I used to hate horror, but at some point that switched, and I started seeing every single new movie that came out, even like back when there was straight-to-DVD trash, and every single classic that I could get my hands on. I definitely slowed down over time, but in the past year or so, there have been several horror movies that have kind of reignited my excitement for the genre. Not that one. I'm talking about Weapons, Undertone, HOKUM. And if you might see it, don't worry, I will start without any spoilers, and I will let you know before I get into the details. HOKUM stars Adam Scott, known for his comedic awkwardness on Parks and Rec and more recently, Severance. If you follow the trends of horror as a whole, you likely are aware that the genre has recently become an obvious allegory for trauma.
It's a movie about trauma. It's a movie about trauma. Trauma, study in trauma, rage and trauma, female trauma. What does trauma really look like? This is what trauma looks like. PTSD, trauma, generational trauma.
And while a lot of these movies bludgeon you over the head with metaphors, HOKUM found a way to avoid doing that while still completely relating to the human psyche. So if you've heard one criticism about HOKUM, it's probably that the opening and closing scenes feel like they're out of a different movie, which is sort of the point. We start by watching a father and son wandering in the desert. They find a bottle with a map in it, but the cork is stuck. The father knows that if he can't remove the cork, he will have to shatter the bottle, and the only thing around that he could use would be the back of his son's skull. We pull out of that, and what we've been viewing is the finale of the Conquistadors trilogy being written in real time by Oom Bauman, who Adam Scott plays, and he's struggling to write it. The contrast is immediate. Oom's home. Is that a good Canadian? Oom's home is like dark and deep blues, and the desert scene is bright sunlight and orange red. As he fetches a box of photographs, we see two urns beside each other, one filled with the ashes of his mother and the other with his father. As he looks at the photos, he finds one of his mother that was taken from their honeymoon, showing her standing beside a giant tree. They had visited rural Ireland. Why did I do that to me? The Verger
has a limited release next week. Roar her, gem her?
There's gotta be oral germ whore.
Okay, bye.
They had visited Ireland, staying at the Bilberry Woods Hotel deep in the woods. We then shift and we're following Oom as he arrives at that very spot where he plans to scatter their ashes. I really loved the way these scenes informed us about the character. The groundskeeper is in the parking lot, like 10 feet away from him as he gets out of the car, and he doesn't even acknowledge his existence. And then as he does start to interact with people, he's a asshole. He notices that Fergal, the groundskeeper, is handling the corpse of a ram. Fergal reveals that they are essentially pests around here. They ruin the vegetation, and because of the local abundance of magical, mysterious mushrooms in the woods, the goats tend to get high as fuck and climb on top of patrons' cars to look at their reflection. It's part of Fergal's job to just kill the rams when they are tripping balls and hurting cars. Inside the hotel, Oom finds an old man telling a terrifying story about a witch to these two twin boys. The witch enchants traveling men and boys and captures them and tears pieces of their body off, including the one you're thinking of, and takes them on a tour of the underworld. I really thought the twins would come back for some creepy moments and at least give us a good reference shot to The Shining, but Oom tells them to go find their parents and they scuttle away. And I did think this was really interesting because even when he's at his most combative to everybody else, he does do that small thing to help the kids that he could have just ignored it. And honestly, it wouldn't have been surprising for him to enjoy the sight of kids being scarred for life. The man reveals himself to be the owner of the hotel, and like the twin boys, surely he'll come back for more later, but no, he doesn't. It kind of felt like a scene got deleted or something, and I still loved the movie overall, but I couldn't help but wonder why those three never came back. Oom is struggling to find his room, and he meets Fiona. She ends up helping him find his room, and then also points the way to the giant tree from the photograph with his mother. He goes to that spot, and he spreads their ashes, and we watch as he gently and intentionally places his mother's remains in various nooks and roots, And then he stands, opens the other container, and dumps his father's ashes out like it's the last bit of a cold cup of coffee. In the woods, he meets an unhoused man named Jerry, who offers him a drink of moonshine that Ohm accepts. He declines, however, a taste of the other beverage that Jerry is enjoying, which is a mixture of goat's milk and those mystical, magical mushrooms from the forest. Ohm goes back into the hotel and sits at the bar where he chats up Fiona. He ends up sharing with her the ending of his story. The father attempts to shatter the bottle over the son's head, killing him, but it doesn't break. So after killing his son, he dies anyway. Why would you write something like that, she asks. It's so bleak. And he basically says, well, life is bleak. And she goes, well, if that's the ending, I'm not reading it. Probably because the liquor is hitting, he tells her that she reminds him of his mother and shares that she had been there on her honeymoon long ago. She asks him about her, and we learn that she died only a few years after that photo was taken. She was shot in the face as she got home from work. Ohm's father became an abusive monster after that and drank himself to death, thus the way he scattered their ashes. Ohm asks Fiona about the honeymoon suite, and she reveals that it's been closed for years. It turns out that the owner of the hotel actually believes that story about the witch, and after several attacks up in the honeymoon suite, they ended up sealing it off completely and trapping her inside, and no one has been up there ever since. Fiona has always wanted to sneak up there and see what it looks like, but the only key never leaves the owner's side. Ohm asks Fiona, wouldn't she be afraid to go up there? And she shares a book of Irish folklore that she has, which mentions that if you're ever chased by a witch, drawing a circle of chalk around yourself can protect you. So at this point, we meet Albie, who is the bellhop at the Bilberry, and he is dressed in like full 1930s bellboy outfit. He's very friendly, albeit a little bit overbearing from the start. He ends up sharing an account of his own brush with the witch when he shined his lighter through the closed gate leading to the honeymoon suite. HOKUM, Ohm says. And then he looks at the camera because he said the movie title. No, I'm just kidding. But he does say the title there, and it's basically just mumbled under his breath. And what does HOKUM even mean? Basically, pretentious rubbish. Through this interaction, we learn that Ohm is like a Stephen King level writer. He's known everywhere he goes. People recognize his name, recognize his face. And so now thinking about his attitude, it's just like, dude, don't you think Americans have a bad enough reputation when we're traveling abroad? We're already the laughingstocks of the entire world. Would it kill you to just like be decently nice out of town? Ohm is depressed as fuck. He's full of anxiety and disdain over his choice to even come here, and now he's very, very drunk. So when Albie is completely unable to read the room, talking about how he too is a writer and hoping that Ohm will read his manuscript, Ohm is repeatedly trying to tell him to go away, but he's not getting the hint. Ohm ends up placing a spoon over the flame of a candle and then presses it onto Albie's hand. And this is crazy because I know on one hand, the film wants us to know how big of a dick this character is, but on the other hand, why would they let him still stay there after that? Like, not only has he horribly assaulted someone, probably leaving a permanent scar, but he's still drunk and he just got here. Like, if this is how he's introducing himself, what else is he gonna do? But okay, I'll suspend my disbelief. And it is interesting at this part to think we are possibly going to be rooting against the main character as they go into the more challenging events of the movie. What happens if we don't want a lead to escape or survive? How could that affect the tension of the entire experience? I do want to mention Adam Scott's performance here because he's truly phenomenal from start to finish. He really is a shell of a person, desperately trying in the wrong ways to build a wall around himself. If he hurts everyone around him, they can't hurt him. Ohm goes to bed, but accidentally leaves his tape recorder behind. And I don't remember it ever being mentioned in the movie why he doesn't have a phone at all. Logically, someone in modern day would use a phone to record any voice notes if they have ideas for their book or whatever. But instead, he carries this tape recorder. So Fiona snatches up the recorder, takes it to his room, knocks on the door, but he's not answering. She has a really bad feeling, so she grabs Albie and asks him to open the door for her, which obviously he doesn't want to do. You shouldn't be going into a guest's room. But finally he gives in, helps her unlock the door, they open it up, and I said I wouldn't spoil you yet. This is where the main events of the movie essentially start kicking into gear, as the following night is the annual Halloween party. And Fiona, who has now made more of a connection with Ohm than anyone else, disappears. without a trace. HOKUM made $6.4 million at the box office last weekend, which blasted past expectations and is just another piece of proof that audiences are hungry for good quality horror. And while Damian McCarthy can certainly be thanked for this film, I also want to say that the magic seems to come from his relationship with Colm Hogan, the director of photography. The camera work seems to be based completely in spatial disorientation, both in terms of what we can see and what we can't see, as well as the layout of the actual hotel. Much like the Overlook in Stanley Kubrick's Stephen King's The Shining, the building doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense if you try to consider what the layout would be. And while there are certainly large chunks of the screen left in darkness for a lot of the movie, there are plenty of moments where we can see more than we logically would be able to. It forces us as a viewer into a spot of hypervigilance. You don't want to look around the screen, but you also feel like you don't have a choice. And the visuals are matched perfectly by the sound design, which uses a lot of audio manipulation. There is music, but it usually gets stripped away and fully disappears for some horrifying stretches. Or, in my favorite example, the sound of an alarm slowly morphs into the sounds of a wailing woman, and you almost barely even notice that it's happening. It is so creepy. And they use a lot of other sounds too, ticking clocks, ringing bells, and that really builds on the psychology of anticipation. You know, with some not so good horror movies, you can see the jump scares coming from a mile away because they basically zoom in on it before it happens and tell you to brace yourselves. HOKUM just turns this on its head, and even if you know something is coming, it somehow disarms you. I don't normally jump during horror movies, and this one literally got me 3 or 4 times. And that is something I've seen a lot of other people say too. What I most loved about this movie is that it is just a really fun time. So much horror feels the need to be mean-spirited and brutally punish both the characters and the audience with the worst events they could possibly come up with and horrible sadistic violence, and they just leave you feeling awful. And I'm not saying there's no place for that, but it is nice when it's done in a fun way, because this movie feels like walking through a haunted house with your friends. And now, if you don't want to be spoiled, it would be time for you to click away and come back once you've seen the movie, because it really is worth it to be totally surprised. But if you don't care, or if you've already seen it, let's go deeper. Hopping back a few minutes to what Fiona and Albie found when they opened Ohm's door. I was freaking gagged, I'm not gonna lie, as I did not see this coming at all. They opened the door to find his lifeless body hanging from a noose. We then shift to a black and white elevator. It's really fuzzy and distant, and he wakes up in a hospital bed. Days have passed, though I don't think they say exactly how many, and Ohm goes back to the hotel to collect his belongings. And when he talks to Mal, who works the front desk, he learns that it was Fiona who saved him. That's when he learns that the day after his incident, Fiona vanished without a trace during the Halloween party. The property was searched, but nothing was found. Mal is suspicious of Jerry, the man in the woods, because it's known by the locals that he killed his wife. Ohm asks him if the honeymoon suite was searched, since Fiona mentioned wanting to go up there, but Mal says there's no point in checking because there's only the one key and it never left the owner's pocket. So Ohm goes to the woods and finds Jerry, who says that a few days before, he snuck into the hotel to raid the lost and found cabinet for medications and drugs that the guests left behind. And the bell from the honeymoon suite that hangs above the front desk began to ring. And when he looks over, he sees the decaying ghost of Fiona pointing at the sign. So Ohm is like, bro, were you drinking some of your magic milk when you saw her? And he's like, of course I was. But it doesn't make you see things that aren't there. It helps you see the things that you can't normally see. Ohm clearly doesn't buy it, but the guilt he feels over Fiona saving his life won't relent. As of today, the hotel will be closed for the season. So Jerry says he's going to go back there that night and sneak up to the honeymoon suite and says he'd like Ohm to join him. I don't remember how he said he got the key, but he has the key now. Ohm asks him if he really killed his wife, and Jerry admits that, yeah, that's true, but she was horribly ill, and he did it as an act of mercy after she asked him to. That night, they sneak into the hotel, and Jerry goes to the back to look for the crossbow that Fergal uses to shoot those feral goats. But Fergal was seemingly expecting him and knocks him out, zip ties his hands, and throws him in the van to take him to the police. So Ohm is now left alone at the hotel. The bell from the honeymoon suite rings again, and he reveals that he now holds the key. He opens the locked lift and heads up, drinking from his flask along the way. The suite is made up of a few rooms, which are cramped with untouched furniture and decor, frozen in time since the door last closed. An old clock sits in the room, featuring a smiling boy who swings a golf club against a bell to ring every hour. Ohm looks around for a bit, and it is creepy, and he continues to drink, and eventually he passes out in the bed. A vision appears. A young boy sitting on the floor, playing with a gun that accidentally goes off. Milk and oranges spill across the floor into the frame, and the boy's mother walks in and drops to her knees beside him, with a hole in her face. On the TV, an old children's show plays, hosted by a terrifying-looking donkey man. Then it's revealed that the same freaky donkey man is standing in the room, watching over Ohm as he sleeps. So he wakes up, and Mal is standing above him. He says the owner noticed the key was missing and sent him to check things out, so they have to go. And obviously, if no one has been up there in years and years, you'd think that Mal would appear less comfortable in the room. So for a second, I was like, ooh, is it actually Mal? Is he really there? Is this like the room with him? But as he tries to get Ohm to leave the room, Ohm points out the dumbwaiter button and asks about it, and Mal is like, don't touch it. So of course he presses the button. The lift begins to rise, and Mal is like, come on, we gotta go. But Ohm is not going, so Mal just gives up and runs out. When the dumbwaiter reaches the top, it reveals Fiona sitting there. She is still dressed in her Halloween costume from the night she disappeared. Her eyes are open wide, but she is long dead. Mal locks Ohm inside the suite and hurries away downstairs. And now a flashback reveals the truth. Mal drugged Fiona with tea, brought her to the honeymoon suite, and stuffed her into the dumbwaiter, sending her down into the basement. Ohm realizes the voice recorder is sitting beside Fiona's body. She had used it to leave messages when she was trapped. In them, she confesses that she was pregnant, and Mal was the father. He didn't want the child and feared his wife would find out, so he locked Fiona away to die, ensuring his secret would never surface. Meanwhile, Jerry wakes up in the back of the van and cuts himself free, opens the back doors, and even though it's seemingly moving at like 40 or 50 miles an hour, he knows he has no choice but to jump out if he wants to get back to the hotel. In the suite, Ohm begins to panic. He searches everywhere for a way out. There is a small door that leads to the hallway, which I think was probably for delivering room service or something, but even that is locked and bolted. He hears more and more strange sounds around him when the TV turns on. The donkey host reappears on the show, now reading a letter that Ohm wrote.
Boo, bitch!
It reveals that Ohm was indeed the boy we saw earlier, the one who shot his mother. The letter reads, "My dad hates me now, and I'm scared all the time. What do I do?" The donkey looks in the camera and says, "There's no help coming. You should be afraid." It's not an overall complaint of mine, but I found the writing of this reveal was a bit too obvious. When Fiona asks Ohm earlier if they got the person who shot his mother, he says, oh, he was too young to be arrested, but he should have been hanged. As soon as we knew it was a young person and it was at her own home, to me, it was obvious that it was going to be him. Perhaps they could have kept it a little more vague, but it's okay. Because once we know this about Ohm, all of his actions and behaviors that we've witnessed are recontextualized. He has spent his entire adult life believing he is a poison that murdered his family. His entire personality is a trauma response. The heavy drinking is a self-medication to bury that memory. He pushes people away because he genuinely believes his proximity brings death. So he can't stand that it could be true once again in the case of Fiona, and in turn, he ends up acting on behalf of someone else truly for the first time in years. Ohm continues to drink and deal with various terrors when he sees figurines depicting the father and son from his novel. The boy is pointing towards the dumbwaiter, which is, in theory, the only possible escape route left. But as he walks towards it, the tape recorder plays on its own, and Fiona's voice warns that there's no way back up once you're in the basement because the button is totally broken. Ohm improvises and rigs that clock so that instead of hitting the bell to ring the hour, the little boy's golf club will now hit the dumbwaiter button and call it back up. In one of the more chilling sequences, he removes Fiona's body from the lift and sets her in the chair, but she's sitting there, eyes wide open, directly facing the lift. Like, I can't think of anything worse to come back up to and see first thing. But he climbs inside, hits the button, and descends. He must find a way out in the basement, or get back to the dumbwaiter before that clock triggers. It gets to the bottom and he sees a long hallway lit by lanterns. There are strange trinkets hanging from the ceiling like keys, and we see Albie's lighter from the earlier story. The hallway leads to a dead end and a chalk-covered doorway. There's a piece of chalk nearby, so Ohm grabs it. But just as Fiona said, there's no way out from the basement. He goes back to the dumbwaiter, sits and drinks while waiting for the lift. But then he hears it. The witch. Her wails echo through the darkness as she starts to get closer and closer. The clanking of shackles, breathing, cackling, it's all getting louder and louder. She's closing in on him and he's looking at his watch. The dumbwaiter is supposed to trigger any second, but it's not going. It's not going. She's getting closer and closer, and finally the clock triggers, the boy swings, hits the button, and the lift carries Ohm back upstairs. But when he looks back down the shaft, he sees the witch climbing up towards him. She chases him through the room, but he's able to lock her in the entryway area, and he draws a chalk circle around the bed and climbs onto it. The barrier works. The witch can't cross it. But she lurks outside, circling it and peering through the curtains of the four-poster bed. It's so creepy. We shift to the next morning, and Mal comes back to the hotel to find Jerry in horrible shape, still trying to access the lift up to the honeymoon suite. Mal lies to him and says when he found Ohm drunk there the night before, he sent him off to the airport. But before he sends Jerry away successfully, Ohm is able to pull the rope upstairs, which causes the bell for the honeymoon suite above the desk to jingle. Jerry threatens Mal with an axe to demand the key, and he takes it and heads upstairs. Mal takes a blanket and throws it on top of a space heater and turns it all the way up in hopes of setting the building on fire and destroying all evidence. Jerry gets upstairs and is able to use the axe to open the smaller doors into the room. But just as he reunites with Ohm, Mal appears behind him and kills him instantly by shooting him in the head with the crossbow. He goes to leave, but the lift door has already locked, and Ohm snatched the key from Jerry, rushing back down into the basement. Now, if Mal wants to escape before the fire consumes the hotel, he has to follow. In the basement, Ohm attempts to draw another protective circle, but the witch is revealed, and we hear shackles as we cut away. Mal gets to the basement and spots the keys hanging amongst the trinkets. As he's trying to get them off, the witch captures him as well. She drags Mal past Ohm, who sits in his little, mostly complete circle. Ohm begins to cry, and his mother's ghost appears and gently begins to comfort him. He says it was an accident over and over. He's sorry. It was an accident. I know, she says. You can't stay here. She places her hand on his chest, and as the camera pulls back, she's already gone. But where her hand was is his pocket, and inside the pocket is the same small saw that Fiona was able to use to cut him down the night she saved him. He cuts through the shackles and frees himself just as Mal is dragged through a doorway into this slithering group of glowing-eyed demon creatures, presumably to hell. Ohm grabs the keys and runs. The clock mechanism triggers perfectly in time, bringing him back up to the suite. Fiona's body sits there waiting with her eyes wide open like they've been from the start. But when we cut away for a second and return, her eyes are now closed. Ohm barely escapes the suite and gets to the main floor, which is engulfed in flames. Overcome by the smoke, he collapses and loses consciousness. Fergal returns because he hears Fiona's voice calling out to him, but when he gets there, he finds Ohm and takes him to safety. Ohm later wakes up once again in the hospital. Albie comes to visit and brings him a bottle of booze from Fergal to thank him for finding Fiona and giving her peace. He shares that the bodies of Fiona and Jerry were both recovered after the fire, but there's been no sign of Mal's remains at all. This is when Albie makes a confession. He spiked Ohm's flask with Jerry's magical mushrooms as revenge for him burning his hand. So was any of this even real? Ohm looks down at his wrists, and the bruises from the shackles are there. We hear an echo from Jerry from earlier, stating that the mushrooms can help you see things that you otherwise might not. Ohm continues to tease Albie a bit, but he is much nicer to him now, and after refusing the bottle, he even agrees to take a look at Albie's manuscript. Before leaving, Albie gives him the photograph of his mother by the tree, which was recovered from the hotel, and we shift back to the conquistador story as Ohm begins writing a new ending to the book. The father stands over the boy, ready to strike him with the bottle, but hesitates. He tearfully offers the boy the bottle instead, kneeling down, and tells him to strike the back of his head hard enough to break the glass. Follow that map and claim what's yours, he says. The boy prepares to strike, but he can't. He throws the bottle away and collapses into his father, embracing him. They hold each other and cry, and as the camera pans out, we see the bottle in the sand, cork now partially sticking out, and beside it, the skull of a ram. The end. Back to that twist, I have to admit, when we learned that Mal killed Fiona by leaving her in the lift, I did feel a little bit of disappointment, I guess, because I thought maybe Fiona had snuck away because the boss is distracted during the Halloween party and she wanted to finally see it for herself. Maybe she asked Mal to keep a lookout. The dumbwaiter got stuck and she ended up dying, so now he feels responsible. Or, they could have gone the more cliche route of Mal working for the witch and she needs a sacrifice every year on Halloween. And maybe that sacrifice was supposed to be Ohm, but then because of his attempt, he had to improvise and was offering up Fiona. But I can live with it. I'm good. Another complaint I saw is that people wish that the scary donkey bunny was in it more. And while I do somewhat agree because the imagery is so freaking terrifying, I do love that the true evil of the movie comes from just some guy. He has agency and he chooses the most cruel actions possible. He murders a pregnant woman and has no issue smearing that shit-eating grin across his face and going back downstairs. And while the average person might not go that far, we have seen time and time again that people are willing to justify doing and saying horrible things just to maintain their social status or image. We can't ignore the fact that we have an ensemble here of 3 men who murdered women. Ohm killed his mother, Jerry killed his wife, and Mal killed his lover. Ohm's act was an accident. Jerry's was an act of sympathy, and Mal's was a deliberate act of selfishness. Ohm is consumed by his guilt. Jerry is comfortable with his choice. And Mal deflects all responsibility, literally trying to bury his crime in the basement. The Conquistador story's ending mirrors the central idea that violence is passed down and inherited, resulting in a never-ending cycle of harm. Ohm only finds resolution once he reflects on himself, kind of like a stoned goat, looking at himself on top of a car, and he accepts his guilt, and this leads to him choosing differently, refusing to continue that cycle that Mal physically embodies of violence. Ohm committed a horrible act, but it was an accident, yet he has assigned himself the guilt of a murderer. The hotel suite ends up becoming a sort of purgatory for him, and only when he goes deep inside himself, to the literal basement of his mind, and he's shackled by the witch, literally chained to the past, he is unable to escape until he confronts his own history. And we see the armor he's worn the entire movie just melt away. Adam Scott is so devastating here because he looks like a child in some ways. He's sitting there weeping, apologizing over and over for the accident. His mother offers him the forgiveness he's so desperate for and guides him back up toward the light, toward survival. I can definitely be a bit of a sap, but I was not expecting to cry during this movie. And it so easily could have been too cheesy, too hammy, but they really nail it, I feel. And Adam Scott, like I said, absolutely fantastic. The imagery there when he's sitting there weeping perfectly mirrors how he was sitting in that fateful moment as a boy. It's like he's literally been trapped there ever since. I would have preferred that he escapes out of the hotel completely on his own instead of needing help once again from someone else, but maybe we can say it's to show that he's been forced to finally let people in. And I do like the idea of Fiona's ghost calling to Fergal just in time to save Ohm. She guided Ohm to his room on the day they met, and she guided him to safety now. So my biggest complaint for the movie, Albie putting the shrooms in Ohm's drink. Honestly, I'm just confused about his intent, because assuming Ohm wouldn't try to himself, then what? He would have had a little experience and fell asleep in his room? They didn't even say Albie was hoping he'd, have some enlightenment from the trip or anything. It seems like it was just a gag. And I know that burning his hand with the spoon was absolutely insane, but I also think drugging someone is pretty much unforgivable. For all he knows, those shrooms in the drink played a part in him attempting to hang himself. And with the movie having a major plot point being that Mal drugged Fiona in order to kill her, I find it difficult to grapple with this otherwise likable, sympathetic character also drugging someone at the hotel. Of course, the teasing with the shrooms suggests that everything we witnessed may have been nothing more than a hallucination. And there's actually a perfect way to deduce what's real and what's not. But first, I want to jump back to the bookends of the film. The scene from Ohm's book, the thematic representation of Ohm finding the happy ending he had been searching for, whether he knew it or not. If the skull is a symbol of hope, as the movie suggests, and the bottle represents alcoholism, the father smashing it against his son's skull is a direct metaphor for a father's alcoholism destroying the hope and innocence of his child. When the father and son embrace each other and love each other, it's something that Ohm never got. You could also look at the father as Ohm now and the son as his inner child, and he's forgiving him now. He's embracing him. And the freaking wildest thing is that Ohm didn't survive the original ending. According to the director, the original version featured Ohm dying in the basement, chained to the wall forever. And look, sometimes a bleak ending is the way to go. The Descent, The Mist, Hereditary, they are classics in their own right, partially because they end on such unbelievably dark notes. But McCarthy argued that if Ohm endures this entire grueling ordeal, confronts his deepest trauma, and then simply dies horribly, everything kind of becomes emotionally hollow. If the film is fundamentally unfair and healing is impossible to achieve, then why watch him struggle? So Ohm survives the fire, and he changes the ending of his book. The boy tosses the bottle, and it lands beside the skull in the sand. Hope is waiting just over the next hill, completely untethered from violence. McCarthy ended up doing the exact same thing, changing the script for HOKUM to end in light instead of darkness. But back to the question, did any of this really happen, or was the entire haunting just a horrible psychedelic mushroom trip? There is, of course, a good amount of evidence that it was all in his head. The first time that we see he's haunted is while he's at home before he goes to the hotel, so the ghosts of his past certainly went along with him on vacation. Then, of course, there's Jack the Jackass, seemingly born from the distorted memories of a real kids show that he was watching when he killed his mother. So when his brain is swimming in a pool of unmeasured hallucinogens, it makes perfect sense that his ultimate demons would appear, especially with the coincidence that Fiona's costume has the bunny ears that look similar to the host. So if we assume that his personal hauntings from his mother and the Donkey Bunny Man are hallucinations, what about that witch? Here is the brilliant way that you can confirm exactly what's real and what's not. When Ohm sees the children's show playing on the TV, the reflection in his glasses is only showing static. He's staring at a television screen that's only playing static. No demonic donkey man. So this is manifesting in his own mind. The witch, on the other hand, has a reflection in his glasses. The witch is real. It also ties back to the story from the beginning about the witch stealing boys and men, which makes sense that Fiona was not snatched away. But hopping back to the beginning, when Fergal shares about the goats eating shrooms and looking at their own reflections on cars, whether Ohm hallucinated these events or not, he was certainly drugged. And the experience was based on him looking at his own reflection. We face impossible moral challenges every single day. Do we act out of love? Do we act out of fear? Or do we act out of selfish self-preservation? Many people live their lives under a heavy weight of guilt for one reason or another. It's up to us to choose whether we deny it, distort it, or defy it. And I think this film could be suggesting that only the most honest response will be rewarded with escape or the happy ending. Not like that. But justice for Jerry, man. I loved that he was just a beacon of light from his first scene. He's the only reason Fiona's body was found and the truth came out. He's the only reason Ohm escaped and survived these events. He killed his wife in an act of mercy, and now he's given his own life for others. Again, just in a different way. It sucks, and it's sad, and it's unfair. But such is life. And if the film is showing through Ohm that bad actions or outcomes don't necessarily lead to bad people, maybe it's showing through Jerry that good intentions still carry weight and consequences. And through Mal, monsters go to hell. That was very satisfying. In a world where so many monsters will seemingly never face justice from the system that they themselves control, it's kind of nice to think that the overall world operates on a larger, grander karmic system. Thank you again so much for joining me. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments and what scared you the most in the movie. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, HOKUM if you got 'em.